All right, everybody. Let's go ahead and get started. It's great to be with all of you this morning. Thank you for being here. This is our last Sunday forum of the season before we break for the summer, and that's because I'm getting ahead of myself, but the bishop is coming next Sunday, right? So that's why we're wrapping up this Sunday. So thank you all for being here. Today we'll do as we've done once or twice a term or a semester kind of. We tried to give a parish update from the leadership of the church to let you know what's going on, give a chance for questions if we have time, and so forth. So that's the goal today. We have an agenda that looks like a lot, but I think we'll swim through it pretty well. They come? All right, there we go. So these are the main topics we're going to hit. I won't read them to you, but you can see them for yourselves. And we have a number of speakers lined up, and we're going to start with the next slide with a video teaser for a special choir gala, a special choir gala coming this Friday evening that we hope you all will join us for, a fundraiser for the choir's pilgrimage coming next summer, summer of 2024.
My name is Brent Tavelda. I'm the Director of Music here at St. Stephen's, and we're excited to offer our first Spring Music Gala on May 19. It's going to be a fundraiser to support our upcoming pilgrimage to Southwest England in the summer of 2024. We're going with the choirs from River Road Church, and we'll be bringing our St. Stephen's choir as well as the choristers. So the proceeds will go to support their expenses for the pilgrimage.
I'm Diana Chow. I'm the Associate Music Director here at St. Stephen's. We'll be showcasing a lively program of seafaring songs, musical theater tunes, classical love songs, really an entire musical sample platter of various offerings. We'll follow this musical appetizer with a hearty English roast dinner in the courtyard, featuring British culinary classics like Yorkshire pudding, mince pies, and London fog cupcakes for dessert.
Alongside dinner, we're also going to be offering a small silent auction with lots of excellent items for bidding, including yoga and guitar lessons, photo shoot with our communications colleague Dylan Gwaltney, a meal cooked with our associate rector Kate Anthony, a curated wine tasting with our vicar Will Stanley, paintings by local artists, as well as even an opportunity to pick a hymn for one of our upcoming worship services. There'll be lots of other great items, so be sure to check it out.
We're looking forward to showcasing the talents of our wonderful staff singers, and we're excited to be able to feature music that we don't usually get to experience in worship.
Tickets are available on the church website, either for individual seats or for a full table of 8, and also in the parish office.
We hope to see you there.
I'll stand before the Lord of song with nothing on my tongue but hallelujah.
All right. I was going to sing for the musical appetizer, but you got Kelsey instead, so it was lucky you. So that the event starts at 5:30 Friday, and I believe the tickets are $50. Is that right? Or $3.50 for a table. So we'd love to have you. So these are my bits, which are pretty straightforward. You're right. Pretty straightforward updates from me, and I'm going to hand it over to others. As you will have seen and heard, our intern for family ministry, Ethan White, is headed to seminary at Virginia Seminary in the fall, and we're very excited for him. He'll have a terrific experience there. So we have launched a search for a director of youth ministry, which is a slightly different job than he has filled, right? He has filled an intern Ethan has far more experience and wisdom than the title of his job gives him credit for, but he's had a more of an entry-level intern role, and this is more of a director-level, director of youth ministry role to correlate with the director of children's ministry role. So that's the search we have launched. We've shared the job posting in all these different places, but oftentimes the best way is through word of mouth. So we wanted you all to hear that we've launched that search. The target deadline is May 26th, I believe, which we'll extend if we need to, but I wanted you to hear that. Please spread the word yourselves through your own networks that you might have. And we will have a chance. Ethan's last Sunday will be June 4th, and he is going to preach at least a couple of the services that day, and we'll have a reception to celebrate his time with us as well. So stay tuned for that. So that's that. My other update for you is, just so you all know, one of the things that the staff and vestry is working on, and I think we'll have, we haven't had time to really flesh this out, but we're getting there in the coming weeks, is to more fully staff the committee structure and leadership, lay leadership of the parish here, which as with many places, just sort of, lost some momentum and some people during the pandemic and during the transition, and so we're repopulating our standing committees, many of which you would know already, like finance and outreach and buildings and grounds and so forth. There are 3 new committees that we're forming, which I wanted you to hear about. One we're going to call Committee for Communal Care, which you might think of as pastoral care, but is not only, so it'll have representatives of the different pastoral care ministries that we have, Eucharistic visitors, pastoral visitors, so forth. But it will also involve how we care for each other as a community, not only in times of sickness and in health, but through other ways as well. So it might incorporate aspects of some of the mental health care focus, for example, that we've had a few weeks ago, and that kind of thing. Meals, support with meals, the prayer shawls that we give to all those things would fall under that committee. And then another one is going to be hospitality and newcomer welcome and integration, how we're welcoming folks into the congregation here, how we're helping them get connected, maybe to small groups, maybe to different ministry areas they might be interested in, how we're helping people. It's such a big place, it's important to think about intentionally how we're connecting people in those ways. So we're going to have a committee focused on hospitality and welcome. And then a third new committee is, the working title is Front Porch Ministries. And St. Stephen's has a lot of these. So this is like our cafe, the Mayfair House, the farmer's market. These are sort of the ministries and businesses, really, some of them that operate sort of outside of the front doors of the church, kind of on our front porch, if you will. And how are we linking together and communicating together and collaborating together amongst those different ministries? The new Dogwood preschool coming back is another example. Some of the art shows and galleries we have in different spaces. So how are we integrating and collaborating amongst those ministries? So anyway, just a heads up that those are being formed. They will all have staff representatives, vestry liaisons, and at-large members of the congregation. And if you're interested in any of those, let us know. We'd love to connect you to some of those opportunities. All right, so that's my bit. I'm going to hand it over now to our senior warden, Andy Luke.
I don't need that, thanks, yeah.
You're hardwired.
I am hardwired. Thank you, John. You good? Sorry, I can't see. One more. Yeah. Excellent. Good. Thank you. John, thank you. And as John said, it's my pleasure to serve on the vestry as your senior warden. My name is Andy Luke. I am especially excited to talk about this topic. I have worked for many years in the manufacturing sector. And throughout my career in manufacturing, one thing I've learned is that nothing is as important as the health and safety of our teammates. Safety is deeply embedded in our company culture at work. Safety is the first topic on every meeting agenda, even sales meetings. So it should not surprise you that it's really affected how I see things, whether it's from aggressive drivers on the downtown expressway or driving through the neighborhood and seeing landscaping crews with loud machinery that aren't wearing hearing protection or eye protection. Of course, a safety mindset and the related behaviors are not just important at work, but at home and even at church. Understanding the risks, knowing the things that we can control and not control, and having a plan to address issues big and small is both smart and responsible. I'd also argue it's the loving thing to do. So, John, we're deeply grateful for you in asking that we develop an emergency response plan, and to Larry Bidwell and team for drafting it. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Larry to give us an overview of the plan. Larry?
Good morning. I don't want to say John put a lot on my plate when I started this, but when I got the assignment, I had a full head of dark hair, and I was clean shaven, and these used to be long pants. Seriously, one of the first things that John asked of me when he got here was, what was the church's response in the event of both medical and non-medical emergencies? So for about the last 4 to 6 months, we've been putting a lot of effort into that. The idea is that we want to make sure that people feel safe and comfortable when they're at the church. We want to protect our property. But at the same time, we don't want to lose who we are as the St. Stephen's community. The easiest thing in the world to do would be to lock every door, make people buzz in and out, but then St. Stephen's would no longer be St. Stephen's. So with that in mind, we have designed a plan that involves these few bullet points. The first one is we're establishing protocols for any situation, whether it's an emergency, medical situation, or a non-medical situation. You may have seen my guys walking around the building with these in the earpieces. We use these every Sunday morning with our security officers, and we're in constant radio communication. But what you may not know is we have those radios put throughout the building. We keep one outside of Palmer Hall. There's one in the nursery. There's 2 in the church, one in the sacristy hallway and one in the narthex. In case anything would happen, all it would take is someone to go up, follow very simple guidelines. We have an emergency in the church, and then we move to that site. During the week, we're keeping a radio in the Mayfair house and in the cafe during their hours. Farmers Market has radios at their volunteer tent and the farmers market manager. We're also starting to keep a radio in the AV room whenever we're doing these live streams or broadcasts, so that we're all in communication if we need to be. The second thing that we're doing is we're making staff assignments for any sort of emergency, that there is going to be at least one dedicated staff member and one backup staff member for any situation that can respond to a particular location. Now, I don't know if you all were aware of this or not, but a month ago, all but 2 members of our staff went through CPR, AED, and first aid training with the Red Cross here, so we're all certified. In addition, we currently have 1 AED that's kept in this hallway. By the summer, we will have 3, one on the 2nd floor, one inside the church, and then this one. And when the Dogwood Preschool comes back, we'll have an additional one downstairs. We're also looking at technology to improve our security. This summer, you'll see some cameras being put up. We're going to put a fisheye camera at the front portico so that we can see what's going on in the parking lot, particularly with evening events. I know there has been some concern when people leave at night. How do I know that the parking lot is safe? Well, we're going to have a camera out there that my guys can monitor. I'll have it on my phone. I can monitor the area 24/7. We're going to have a camera that monitors the preschool. We're also going to have a camera at the loading dock and one that looks at the rear door, the sacristy hallway door at the rear of the church. Those are the areas that our security folks have told us appear to be the weakest areas at the church. So we're doing that as an initial step. And in the future, we may add some more around the campus. We're also putting in pads, keypads, for people either with a Bluetooth on your phone or with a code that you'll be able to access the building after it locks. We started to do rolling locks of the doors on nights that we don't have large events. Historically, this building has stayed open, I think, from about 7:30 in the morning till 10 at night. My guys tend to work a slightly different shift because I'm an early riser. So I'm over here about 5:30 in the morning, and when I come over, all the lights come on and the doors open. And I usually have somebody here on staff till about 9 or 9:30. But what happens is that one person, if you have 8 or 9 entrances, you really can't control or follow where people are. So we've announced that we're starting to slowly roll doors locked, so eventually, later at night, everybody will come in and exit through the parking lot doors. And then finally, we're starting to coordinate more with our security officers and especially Dogwood Preschool. So I've met with Dogwood's board a couple of times. They have specific emergency plan requirements because of the State Department of Education. We're coordinating our planning with them, so in the event of something, for example, if the fire alarm goes off, that we know where Dogwood Preschool's evacuation spot is, and we have a staff member there to ensure that all the kids are out. At the same time, we're upgrading their entryways so that no one can get in that preschool without prior notification. All the parents this summer are going to be given a QR code for their phones. It's going to identify that they are with a particular child at the location. My staff will have a different code. Their staff will have a different code, and we will be able to, in real time, know exactly who's down there and how long they've been there and when they leave. I know a lot of this sounds different from what we're used to, and quite honestly, it is a different world. I can still remember growing up, the one place you never had to worry about was at church. No matter what anybody thought, there was always that idea in the back of their head, well, if there is a big guy up there, I don't want to do anything to one of his buildings. Unfortunately, those days are over. I get an awful lot of data every week from the Department of Justice and NCIC about activities that are occurring at churches. We don't want to lose who we are, but at the same time, we have to take preventive steps. So over the summer, you'll see more and more of this rolling out. Thanks to Sarah's help, you'll see some articles in some of the upcoming spirits and e-spirits about things. And please bear with us, and also please give us some feedback. If you see something that you think we ought to address, let me know. We're here for you all, so I really want to try and do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Larry. Larry, thank you. All of us actually have a part in this. Recent events have reminded us that it's really important that emergency vehicles and first responders have unimpeded access to our buildings. So among some of the changes planned, and we'll talk more about this through the summer, are limiting some parking in a couple areas. I'd argue that some of what we might suggest is not new, but a return to practices that we had pre-COVID. Your support is really important, especially as we prepare to welcome the preschool back this fall. So next slide, Sarah. So built into our 2023 budget is a very exciting refresh of the St. Stephen's website. I'm pleased to turn it over to Sarah, who's going to talk a little bit about the work ahead. Sarah?
Our website is so old. We started the process of developing the website we have now 10 years ago. In technological terms, that's an eon. 10 years ago, some people were still using flip phones. 10 years ago, Bill Sachs and I were the only current staff members who worked here. 10 years ago, we did not have Dylan Gwaltney. 10 years ago, we almost never used video. We certainly didn't live stream. And in fact, we didn't even have a simple way to post audio files of sermons. We didn't have an app. So we have made various sort of Rube Goldberg type improvements and adjustments to the current site to make it work for us, but it's long past time for an overhaul. In addition, the content management system that we use is going away, so we really have no choice but to create a new website. So I'm grateful to the vestry for budgeting for this in this calendar year, and we know that our website is the front door, especially for newcomers. Many people church shop on the web now. When I go to newcomer receptions, I always ask people how they heard about St. Stephen's. And to a person, they say, well, I Googled Episcopal churches, yours came up, and I really loved your website, so I decided to give it a try. So we want to put our best foot forward with this new website. The goals for the new site include just clearing out the cobwebs. I mean, as we have added on and changed some things, it's sort of like when you keep adding things at your house, and then at some point you step back and look and think, this doesn't work with this anymore, this doesn't work with that anymore. So we're going to clear out the cobwebs. We're going to give video and live stream pride of place. There will be a better interface with our app, easier navigation, cleaner navigation. It'll be easier to update. When we launched this site, I was the only person who knew how to update it. Slowly, we've added, more people who do know how to make simple updates, but it's a fairly complex machine, and so a lot still falls to me. So if I got hit by a bus, it would be difficult to maintain the site. It'll be easier for users to do things like fill out a registration form or make a reservation, buy tickets for something, or to make a gift. What won't change is it will not be, I pledge to you, it will not be churchy or institutional. It will be seeker-friendly, as the current site is. It will accurately reflect our ethos, because it's really important that when someone does Google Episcopal churches, they find ours, they like our site, and they come for a visit, that what they saw on the site is reflected in what they experience when they get here. So that will still be the case. We'll be working on this all summer and into the fall. I always tell people who are getting ready to do a new site, it's kind of like building a house. You think you know how it's going to go, but things do pop up. So we're going to do our best to keep this going at a good pace, and we will certainly let you know when we're ready for feedback and ready to launch, ready to sort of test it out. So anyway, thank you.
I don't need that. Okay. Sarah, thank you. I think it's really exciting. It's going to make it so much easier to find information, easier to navigate, and certainly much easier to maintain. So well done. So in closing, it was so good to see many of you on Thursday night at the inaugural Blossom Bash, which was benefiting Dogwood Preschool. As anyone who is there would agree, there is such genuine excitement in the Dogwood community about their return to St. Stephen's. And many of them commented on just how welcome they have felt by St. Stephen's, by the clergy, by the staff, and by parishioners everywhere they go. So thanks for all you're doing to make them feel at home. Preparations are underway for their move-in this summer in advance of the start of school this fall. So big thanks, to Fred and Larry, to you and your team for all you're doing to help make that possible. So thank you. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to Penn Rogers. Penn.
May I? Thank you. I'll use this. Okay. Thank you. Good morning, everybody. I woke up today and I said to myself something I haven't said in 2 years. It's a good day. It's a good day to be the treasurer at St. Stephen's Church. And that's not an overstatement. We really have, over the last year and a half or 2 years, turned a lot of corners. We still have corners to turn, but we've made great progress. And I just want to share with you for a few minutes where we are right now on some significant items and encourage anybody who wants any more detail about this to call me directly. I'm happy to talk to you at any time. First item on my list is to update you on what we're doing with our accounting update. I think most of you are aware that we engaged a firm called GuideServe earlier this year, which is a accounting management firm that specializes in church accounting and church management accounting. We've been transitioning all of our previous accounting processes, which were really a hodgepodge, over to GuideServe to integrate all of our financial information and put it in a format that is easy for us to review and manage and keep track of. We had hoped to have the process completely done and the system transitioned by now. We're a little bit behind, but I think we'll be done with it soon. We've got a few hiccups along the way. We've been trying to hire a part-time accountant, and the market for those has been difficult, so we've had to plug that hole with temporaries. Cleaning up the old system has proved to be somewhat problematical, but I think we're pretty far along on that. And given the time of the year, we've lost a little bit with Lent and with Holy Week and vacations, but we're still in pretty good shape. We've transitioned about 100% of our accounts payable. General ledger is about 95% done, and where we're behind is on our receivables. The slowdown there is transitioning the way we account for and keep track of and manage our pledge revenues. Active pledges, payments, crediting to the right account. It's all been difficult to get the system in place that will serve us going forward, but we're probably 50 to 60% of the way there. So all in all, we're in pretty good shape with the accounting process update. The goal of this, of course, is to get comprehensive financial information that is understandable and accessible, and I think we're pretty close on that and hope to have good results to report to you, certainly by the end of the year, but hopefully before then. Second on my list is just a brief financial update on where we are, a snapshot, if you will. Talk about three things. One is our cash position. The church currently has about $320,000 of unrestricted cash on the books and about $650,000 of cash that's restricted or used for designated accounts. That's much healthier than it's been in past years. We're happy about that. Income and expenses to date as compared to budget, on an aggregate basis, we are probably about $130,000 to the good on income and expenses versus our budgeted expenses. We're working on a $3 million operating budget, if that gives you some sense of where we are. We have various categories that have some shortfalls, some that have overages, but everything balances out to give us about $131,000 surplus at this point. We are entering the season of the year where everything kind of slows down because of summertime in terms of revenue, but we think we're in a pretty good position to weather that without having to dip into reserves or draw on our credit line. Church currently has no debt, and we'd like to keep it that way. Third, on the endowment fund, just to give you an update there, the endowment fund currently has a balance of about $5.8 million, which is down some from a year ago. The endowment suffers from the market ups and downs like the rest of you do, so it's not surprising that it's down a little bit. Those funds are managed by the trustees of the funds, which is a consortium of churches in the Diocese of Virginia that put monies into the trustees to manage. They do a pretty good job. They're not market beaters, but they're not market laggards either, and I think we're okay there. Other funds that are being managed by the trustees of the funds total about $1.3 million, which includes our reserve fund and some other designated funds that we draw on during the year. So that's where we are on finances briefly. The other thing I want to touch on is what we're doing with reserves at the church. You've probably heard me say before that we've been lacking in a reserve policy and an investment management policy, and that's something that we have remedied. As of now, the vestry at its last meeting approved a formal reserve policy for the church, with the headline of which is 2 reserves. We've established a formal capital reserve fund and an operating reserve fund, or in other terms, a working capital reserve fund. We've set initial targets for these funds of $800,000 with the capital reserve fund and $500,000 on the operating reserve fund. The capital reserve fund is fully funded at this point by virtue of the fact that we have transferred our existing capital reserve balance, which was standing at a little over $550,000, I think, maybe $6. And we've shifted some money from one of our other funds into that capital reserve fund. So we have a starting balance in there of a little over $1 million, which is not ultimately where we hope to be, but it gives us a cushion and puts us in a good position to start this process. The operating reserve fund, we expect to fully fund out of the employee retention tax credits that we've applied to the Internal Revenue Service for. Those refund claims are being processed now. Unsurprisingly, like everything else the IRS does, it's taking longer than they thought, but it will get here eventually. We expect to realize over $600,000 from those refunds. We're taking $500,000 of that and putting it in the operating reserve fund. We'll determine what to do with the balance when we see what the final total is. As part of the reserve policy, we have looked at our budgeting year over year, and we are adopting, as part of this policy, a capital budgeting plan, which will give us formal budgeting on an annual basis for capital expenditures and a longer horizon to do our planning with respect to capital expenses. That's going to help us a lot in the long term. Lastly, 2 other things on my list, which we are in the beginning phases of, is adopting a formal investment policy for the church. Surprisingly, we don't have one. We rely on the investment policy that the trustees of the funds uses, and we make tweaks periodically. But there's not been a concerted effort to look at how the church's funds are managed and how they are invested. And I'm in the process of drafting for the vestry a formal investment policy that will cover that, as well as some cash management principles that we can adopt. We don't make a lot of money on our unrestricted deposits, and we're looking at alternatives for that, particularly in this current interest rate environment where we can make a little money on our money. So those are on the horizon. We'll have more about that as time goes on, but that concludes my remarks, and I'm getting the evil eye from the vicar, so I'm going to turn the mic over to him.
Just the Sewanee eye for you, Penn, for our shared for our shared institution. So I definitely want to leave time for questions, and a reminder that the video cuts off at 11. So if you have a very profound question, if you don't ask it before 11, it will never be recorded. It's as if it was not asked. So I'm not going to just read numbers to you. Nothing is more boring than that. No, you didn't read numbers. That was good. So this is sort of the latest chapter in a sort of book we're writing about markers of parish vitality. The Holy Spirit does not equate to math, but it generally has something to do with numbers. And so average Sunday attendance is that sort of statistic. There's a joke that whenever clergy get together, nothing helps average Sunday attendance like getting a bunch of clergy together and talking about what their ASA is. It just gets larger and larger the more that you talk. But we have real numbers here, and these are real numbers. And it just a notion here that two comments sort of on a more general basis. These in-person average Sunday attendance for us in 2023 is around 716 people over 6 services. Yes, that is lower than pre-pandemic levels. There is not a church in the Episcopal Church that has a higher ASA than pre-pandemic. And so I'm not just selling it, it's good news that our decline is relatively small. And I remind you that the majority of Episcopal churches in this denomination have fewer than 100 people on a Sunday. We have 716. So just a little perspective for all of us about where we stand in the sort of larger church. And then an interesting fact that this directly ties to what Sarah and Andy were talking about, the website, is in-person and virtual are not apples and apples. But the virtual is not nothing. And the fact that even now, 2 years into in-person services, I was walking to lunch with some colleagues a couple days ago, and a very kind person came up to me and said, "Oh my God, I'm so glad that you all are finally back in person." It's like, good job. I said, well, 2 years ago, we did begin that, yes. But we all have, habits change. And but it's not so. But what this shows is not just people are virtual because they hadn't got the memo yet. People are choosing to engage in a lot of different ways. I know many of you in this room that you engage who are. If you're at this forum, you're not like an outsider generally. You're sort of the inner core here. And I know a lot of you I've talked engage virtually when you're away, when you might be sick, when you might be preparing to go on a trip like I am later today. I don't get the choice of staying home this morning, but you don't want to be around people or something. So having a website, having data that lets us mine and really connect those 366 screens, which may be one person for 5 seconds, or it may be a family of 5 for an hour, is part of the ongoing work. That's not going to go away, and we're committed to this, and we're going to double down on it in the coming years. So obviously, Easter's a big day for us, and Holy Week, really robust engagement. And then these sacramental rites, you always want this number higher than this number. And basically everyone who could have a child did, as you see. So the pandemic was sort of a bump for procreation. And I've said this before, but another sort of reminder for all of us, and the clergy, we just see this up front. Number of these, which is this year, we have 4 baptisms at the Celtic service later today, so that number will actually be 23 at the end of the day. A number of these folks and the 88 there disproportionately are people who moved here in the pandemic. We always have a big, it's always a lot of people here, but on the baptisms, like the 3rd baptism, where people say, well, I moved here from San Francisco, like it's not your average response always. And, Richmond's, people want to move here, and people find us an engaging place, even with our sort of Frankenstein-like created website and things. I mean, it's just, we're But what I'm saying is I'm affirming how good it is now, and we're just looking to make it better. People find it very engaging and find us a welcoming and engaging place, and that is a good sign, a latest sign of the energy and vitality and good spirit that's around here. And so yes, there's another side which just talks about it. It's fine. It's there's the pilgrimage for the fundraiser for the choir trip is this Friday, and then the bishop is visiting next Sunday. One of the bishops who will be here, and all those confirmations, the whole gaggle will be at 11:15. So, as I said earlier, if you really want to see the bishop, come at 11:15. If you are feeling called to a different service, you can go to a different one. So I think it's 11 o'clock on the dot. But let's leave time for at least 2 or 3 questions, if there are any. I know